Would you open us up in prayer for the afternoon, please?
My Father, my King, I praise you and I thank you. Bless your holy name and thank you, Father, for our ability to be here, Father. Please continue to watch and guard over your people, Father. Guard over our hearts for righteousness. Let these words be written within us and let the teaching be edifying so that your name will be exalted. We praise you, Father. Bless your holy name in Yeshua.
Amen. All right. We have a lot of Brit HaDasha portions this week. We're going to start Matthew 19, 16 through 30. And again, this afternoon when we're reading, since we do have some fans going, just make sure we read loud and proud so that people online will be able to hear us. Who would like to start out?
I will. Matthew 19, 16 to 30. And behold, one came and said unto him, Good master, what is good thing shall I do that I may have eternal life? And he said unto him, Why callest thou me good? Why callest me good? There is none good, but one that is Elohim. But if thou wilt enter into life, keep the commandments. And he said unto him, which Yahshua said, Thou shalt do no murder, thou shalt not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness, honor your father and your mother, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. The young man said unto him, All these things I have kept from my youth up. What lack I yet? Yeshua said unto him, If thou wilt be perfect, go and sell that you have and give to the poor, and you have treasure in heaven, and come and follow me. But when the young man heard that saying, he went away sorrowful, for he had great possessions. Then said Yeshua unto his disciples, Verily I say unto you, that a rich man shall hardly enter into the kingdom of heaven. And again I say unto you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of Yahweh. When his disciples heard it, they were exceedingly amazed, saying, Who then can be saved? Then Yeshua beheld them and said unto them, With men this is impossible, but with Yahweh all things are possible. Then answered Peter and said unto him, Behold, we have forsaken all and followed you. What shall we have therefore? And Yeshua said unto them, Verily I say unto you, that which have followed me in the generation when the Son of Man shall sit in the throne of his glory, you also shall sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And everyone that had forsaken houses, or brethren, or sister, or father, or mother, or wife, or children, or lands, for my name's sake shall receive 100-fold, and shall inherit everlasting life. But many that are first shall be last, and the last shall be first.
Amen. Thank you, brother. Next, we're going to be in Mark 12, 28 through 34.
And one of the scribes coming near, hearing them reasoning together, knowing that he had answered them well, asked him, Which is the first command of all? And Yeshua answered him, The first of all the commands is, Hear, O Yisrael, Yahweh our Elohim, Yahweh is one. And you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, and with all your being, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. This is the first command. And the second, like it, is this, You shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other command greater than these. And the scribe said to him, Well said, teacher, you have spoken the truth. For there is one Elohim, and there is no other besides him. And to love him with all the heart, and with all the understanding, and with all the being, and with all the strength, and to love one's neighbor as oneself, is more than all the ascending offerings and offerings. When Yeshua saw that he had answered wisely, he said to him, You are not far from the reign of Elohim. And after that, no one was bold enough to question him.
Thank you, brother. Luke 10, 25 through 37.
And see, a certain one learned in the Torah stood up, trying him and saying, Teacher, what shall I do to inherit everlasting life? And he said to him, What has been written in the Torah? How do you read it? And he answering said, You shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all of your heart, and with all of your being, and with all of your strength, and with all of your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And he said to him, You have answered rightly. Do this, and you shall live. But he, wishing to declare himself righteous, and said to Yahshua, And who is my neighbor? And replying, Yahshua said, A certain man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and fell among robbers, who both stripped and beating him, went away, leaving him half dead. And by the coincidence, a certain priest was going down that way. And when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. And likewise, a Levite also, when he came to the place and seeing, passed by on the other side. But a certain Samaritan journeying came upon him, and went, he saw him, he said, or he had compassion on him. And he went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine, and having placed him on his own beast, he brought him to an inn, and looked after him. And going out on the next day, he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said to him, Look after him, and whatever more you spend, I shall repay you when I return. Who then of these 3 do you think was neighbor to him who fell among the robbers? And he said, He who showed him compassion on him. Then Yahshua said to him, Go and do likewise.
Thank you, brother. Next, we're in John chapter 7.
I got it. And after these things, Yeshua was walking in Galilee, for he was unwilling to walk in Judea, because the Jews were seeking to kill him. Now, the feast of the Jews, the feast of booths, was at hand. His brothers, therefore, said to him, Depart from here, and go into Judea, that your disciples also may behold your works, which you are doing. For no one does anything in secret, and he himself seeks to be known publicly. If you do these things, show yourself to the world. For not even his brothers were believing in him. Yeshua therefore said to him, My time is not at hand, but your time is always opportune. The world cannot hate you, but it hates me, because I testify of it that its deeds are evil. Go up to the feast yourselves. I do not go up to this feast, because my time has not yet fully come. Having said these things to them, he stayed in Galilee. But when his brothers had gone up to the feast, then he himself also went up, not publicly, but as it were, in secret. The Jews therefore were seeking him at the feast, and were saying, Where is he? There was much grumbling among the multitudes concerning him. Some were saying, He is a good man. Others were saying, No, on the contrary, he leads the multitude astray. Yet no one was speaking openly of him for fear of the Jews. But when it was now the midst of the feast, Yeshua went up to the temple and began to teach. The Jews therefore were marveling, saying, How has this man become learned, never having been educated? Yeshua therefore answered them and said, My teaching is not mine, but he who sent me. If any man is willing to do his will, he shall know of the teaching, whether it is of Elohim or whether I speak of myself. He who speaks from himself seeks his own glory, but he who is seeking the glory of the one who sent him, he is true, and there is no unrighteousness in him. Did Moshe give you the law? And yet none of you carries out the law. Why do you seek to kill me? The multitude answered, You have a demon. Who seeks to kill you? Yeshua answered and said to them, I did one deed, and you all marvel. On this account, Moshe has given you circumcision, not because it was from Moshe, but from the fathers. And on the Sabbath, you circumcise a man. If a man receives circumcision on the Sabbath, that the law of Moses may not be broken, are you angry with me because I have made an entire man well?
on the Sabbath? Do not judge according to appearance, but judge with righteous judgment. Therefore, some of the people of Jerusalem were saying, "Is this not the man whom they are seeking to kill? And look, he is speaking publicly, and they are saying nothing to him." The rulers do not really know that this is the Messiah, do they? However, we know where this man is from. But whenever the Messiah may come, no one knows where he's from. Yeshua therefore cried out in the temple, teaching and saying, "You both know me and know where I am from, and I have not come of myself, but he who sent me is true, whom you do not know. I know him because I am from him, and he sent me." They were seeking, therefore, to seize him, and no man laid his hand on him, because his hour had not yet come. But many of the multitude believed in him, and they were saying, "When Messiah shall come, will he perform more signs than those which this man has? Will he?" The Pharisees heard the multitude muttering these things about him, and the chief priests of the Pharisees sent officers to seize him. Yeshua therefore said, "For a little while longer I am with you. Then I go to him who sent me. You shall seek me and shall not find me, and where I am you cannot come." The Jews therefore said to one another, "Where does this man intend to go that we shall not find him? He is not intending to go to the dispersion among the Greeks and teach the Greeks, is he? What is this statement that he said, 'You will seek me and will not find me, and where I am you cannot come'?" Now on the last day, the great day of the feast, Yeshua stood and cried out, saying, "If any man is thirsty, let him come to me and drink. He who believes in me, as the scripture said, from his innermost being shall flow rivers of living water." But this he spoke of the Spirit, whom those who believed in him were to receive, for the Spirit was not yet given, because Yeshua was not yet glorified. Some of the multitude, therefore, when they heard these words, were saying, "This certainly is the prophet." Others were saying, "This is the Messiah." Still others were saying, "Surely the Messiah is not going to come from Galilee, is he? Has not the scripture said that Messiah comes from the offspring of David, and from Bethlehem, the village where David was?" So there arose a division in the multitude because of him. And some of them wanted to seize him, but no one laid hands on him. The officers therefore came to the chief priests and Pharisees, and they said to them, Why did you not bring him?" The officers answered, "Never did a man speak the way this man speaks." The Pharisees therefore answered them, "You have not also been led astray, have you? No one of the rulers or Pharisees has believed in him, has he? But this multitude which does not know the law is accursed." Nicodemus said to them, he who came to him before, being one of them, "Our law does not judge a man unless it first hears from him and knows what he is doing, does it?" They answered and said to him, "You are not also from Galilee, are you? Search and see that no prophet arises up out of Galilee." Everyone went to his home.
Amen. Thank you, brother. The next one is Romans 3:19-28.
And we know that whatever the Torah says, it says to those who are in the Torah, so that every mouth might be stopped and all the world come under judgment before Elohim. Therefore, by works of Torah, no flesh shall be declared right before him. For the Torah is knowledge of sin. But now, apart from the Torah, a righteousness of Elohim has been revealed, being witnessed by the Torah and the prophets. And the righteousness of Elohim through belief in Yeshua, the Messiah, to all and on all who believe. For there is no difference. For all have sinned and fallen short of the esteem of Elohim, being declared right without paying by his favor through the redemption which is in Messiah Yahshua, whom Elohim set forth as an atonement, demonstrate his righteousness, because in his tolerance Elohim had passed over the sins that had taken place before, to demonstrate that at the present time his righteousness, that he is righteous and declares righteous the one who has believed in Yeshua. Where then is the boasting? Is it shut out? By what? Torah? Of works? No, but by the Torah of belief. For we reckon that a man is declared right by belief without works of the Torah. Or is he the Elohim of the Yehudim only, and not also of the nations? Yes, the nations also. 28, right?
That's okay. We'll go next to Romans 9:30 through 10:13.
Romans 9:30. What shall we say then? That the Gentiles which followed not after righteousness have attained to righteousness, even the righteousness which is of faith. But Israel which followed after the law of righteousness had not attained to the law of righteousness. Wherefore, because they sought it not by faith, but as it were by the works of the law, for they stumbled at that stumbling stone. As it is written, Behold, I'll lay in Zion a stumbling stone, and rock of offense, and whosoever believeth on him shall not be ashamed. 10. Up to 13, right?
Yep.
Brethren, my heart's desire and prayer to Elohim for Israel is that they might be saved. For I bear them record that they have a zeal of Elohim, but not according to knowledge. For they being ignorant of Yahweh's righteousness, and going about to establish their own righteousness, have not submitted themselves unto the righteousness of Elohim. For Messiah is the end of the law, for righteousness to everyone that believeth. For Moshe describeth the righteousness which is of the law, that the man which doeth those things shall live by them. But the righteousness which is of faith speaks on this wise, Say not in thine heart, who shall ascend into heaven, that is to bring Messiah down from above, or who shall ascend into the deep, that is to bring up Messiah again from the dead. But what said it? The word is nigh thee, even in thy mouth and in thy heart. That is the word of faith which we preach. That if thou shalt confess with thy mouth the Master Yahshua, and shalt believe in thy heart that Yahweh hath raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For with the heart man believeth unto righteousness, and with the mouth confession is made unto salvation. For the scripture said, Whosoever believeth on him shall not be ashamed. For there is no difference between the Jew and the Greek, for the same Master over all is rich unto all that call upon him. Last, for whosoever shall call upon the name of Yahweh shall be saved.
Amen. And I'll read Romans 13, 1 through 14. Let every being be in subjection to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from Elohim, and the authority that exists are appointed by Elohim. So he who opposes the authority withstands the institution of Elohim, and those who withstand shall bring judgment on themselves. For those ruling are on object of fear, not to good works, but to evil. Do you wish to not be afraid of the authority? Do the good, and you shall have praise from it. For it is a servant of Elohim to you for good. But if you do evil, be afraid. For it does not bear the sword in vain, for it is a servant of Elohim, a revenger to execute wrath on him who practices evil. Therefore, it is necessary to be subject, not only because of the wrath, but also because of conscience. For because of this you also pay taxes, for they are servants of Elohim, attending continually to these duties. Render, therefore, all that what is due to them, tax to whom the tax is due, toll to whom toll, fear to whom fear, and respect to whom respect. Owe no one any matter except to love one another, for he who loves another has fulfilled the Torah. For this you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness, you shall not covet. And if there is any other command, it is summed up in this word, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no evil to a neighbor. Therefore, love is the completion of the Torah. And to do this, knowing that the time that it is ready, the hour for us to wake up from sleep. For now our deliverance is nearer than when we did believe. The night is far advanced, the day has come near. So let us put off the works of darkness, and let us put on the armor of light. Let us walk becomingly, as in the day, not in the wild parties and drunkenness, not living together in indecencies, not in fighting and envy, but put on the Master Yahshua Messiah, and make no provision for the lusts of the flesh. Our next section is in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 1 through 13. Go ahead.
It is commonly reported that there is warring among you, and such warring as is not even named among the nations, so as one to have his father's wife. And you have been puffed up and did not rather mourn, so that he who had done this deed be removed from among you. For I indeed, as absent in the body because of the Spirit, have already judged the one who did this, as though I were present. In the name of our Master Yahshua Messiah, when you are gathered together in my spirit, with the power of our Master Yahshua Messiah, deliver such as want to Satan for destruction flesh, in order that his spirit be saved in the day of the Master Yahshua. Your boasting is not good. Do you not know that a little leaven leavens the entire lump? Therefore cleanse out the old leaven, so that you are a new lump, as you are unleavened. For also Messiah, our Pesach, was slaughtered for us. So then let us celebrate the festival, not with old leaven, nor with the leaven of evil and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. I wrote to you in my letter not to keep company with those before, and I certainly did not mean who knows the deeds of this world before, or with the greedy of gain, or swindlers, or idolaters, such then, since then, with me to go out of the world. But now I have written to you not to keep company with anyone called brother. If he is one who whores or greedy of gain, or an adulterer, or a reviler, or a drunkard, or a swindler, not even to eat with such one. For which have I to do with judging outsiders? Do you not judge those who are inside? But Elohim themselves are outside. Away the wicked one from among you.
Excellent. Thank you. 2 Corinthians, verses 1 through 11, chapter 2.
And I decided just within myself not to come to you again in sadness. For if I make you sad, then who is he who makes me glad, but the one who is made sad by me? And I wrote to you as I did, so that having come, I may not have sadness over those from whom I should have joy, trusting trusting in you all, that my joy is that of you all. For out of much pressure and distress of the heart I wrote to you with many tears, not that you should be sad, but that you might know the love which I so richly have for you. But if anyone has caused sadness, he has not made me sad, but in some degree you all, not to be too harsh. For such a one, this punishment by many is sufficient. So that on the contrary you should rather forgive and comfort, lest somehow such a one be swallowed up with too much sadness. So I appealed to you to confirm your love to him. Besides, I wrote for this purpose also, that I might know the proof of you are obedient in all matters. And whom you forgive any matter, I do also. For indeed, if I have forgiven any matter, I have forgiven that one for your sake in the sight of the Messiah, lest Satan should take advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his thoughts.
Okay. Next one is Galatians chapter 3, 10 through 14.
For those who rely on the Torah of works are under a curse. They are written for the accursed. All who do not continue in all the writings the seeker of the Torah to do them. But no man is justified by the Torah in the sight of Yahweh. It is evident, for the just shall live by belief. And the Torah is not of belief, but the man that does them shall live in them. Mashiach has redeemed us from the curse. Mashiach has redeemed us from the curse of the Torah, being made a curse for us, for it is written, "Cursed is everyone that hangs on a tree, that the blessings of Abraham might come on the other nations through Yahshua HaMashiach, that we might receive the promise of the Ruach through him, through belief."
Thank you, brother. Next one is in Galatians chapter 5, 13 through 26.
For you, brothers, have been called to freedom. Only do not use freedom as an occasion for the flesh, but through love serve one another. For the entire Torah is completed in one word. In this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And if you bite and devour one another, beware, lest you be consumed by one another. And I say, walk in the Spirit, and you shall not accomplish the lusts of the flesh. The flesh lusts against the Spirit against the flesh. And these are opposed to each other, so that you do not do what you desire to do. But if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under Torah. And the works of the flesh are well known, which are these: adultery, whoring, uncleanliness, indecency, idolatry, drugs, sorcery, hatred, quarrels, jealousies, fits of rage, selfish ambitions, dissensions, factions, envy, murders, drunkenness, wild parties, and the like, of which I forewarn you, even as I also said before, that those who practice such as these shall not inherit the reign of Elohim. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, trustworthiness, gentleness, self-control. Against such there is no Torah. And those who are of Messiah have impaled the flesh with its passions and desires. If we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit. Let us not become conceited, provoking one another, envying one another.
Amen. Thank you, brother. The next one is Hebrews chapter 9, 11 through 28.
I'll read it. Hebrews 9, 11 to 28. But Messiah being come, a high priest of good things to come, by a greater, more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is to say, not of this building, neither by the blood of the goats and calves, but by his own blood, he entered in once into the holy place, having obtained eternal redemption for us. For if the blood of bulls and the goats and the ashes of a heifer, sprinkling the unclean, sanctify it to the purifying the flesh, how much more shall the blood of Messiah, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without spot to Elohim, purge your conscience from the dead works to serve the living Elohim? And for this cause he is the mediator of the New Testament, that the means of death for the redemption of the transgressions that were under the first testament, they which are called might receive the promise of eternal inheritance. For where a testament is, there must also of necessity be the death of the testator. For a testament is of force after men are dead, otherwise it is of no strength at all while the testator liveth. Whereupon neither the first testament was dedicated without blood. For when Moshe had spoken every precept to all the people according to the Torah, he took the blood of calves and of goats with water and scarlet wool and hyssop, and sprinkled both the book and all the people, saying, This is the blood of the testament which Elohim hath enjoined unto you. Moreover, he sprinkled it with blood both the tabernacle and all vessels of the ministry, and almost all things are by the law purged with blood, and without shedding of the blood there is no remission. It was therefore necessary that the patterns of things in the heavens should be purified with this, but the heavenly things themselves with better sacrifices than this. For Messiah is not entered into the holy places made with hands, which are the figures of the truth, but into heaven itself, now to appear into the presence of Elohim for us. Nor ye that ye should offer himself often, as the high priest entereth into the holy place every year with blood of others, for then must he often have suffered since the foundation of the world. But now, once in the end of the world hath he appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. And as it is appointed unto men once to die, but after this the judgment. So Messiah was once offered to bear the sins of many, and unto them that look for him shall he appear the second time without sin unto salvation.
Thank you, brother. Next one is James chapter 2, verses 1 through 9.
Got it. My brethren, do not hold your faith in our glorious Lord Yahshua HaMashiach with an attitude of personal favoritism. For if a man comes to your assembly with a gold ring and dressed in fine clothes, and there also comes in a poor man in dirty clothes, and you pay special attention to the one who is wearing the fine clothes, and say, you sit here in a good place, and you say to the poor man, you stand over there, or sit down by my footstool. Have you not made distinctions among yourselves, and become judges with evil motives? Listen, my beloved brethren, did not Elohim choose the poor of this world to be rich in faith, and heirs of the kingdom which he promised to those who love him? But you have dishonored the poor man. Is it not the rich who oppress you and personally drag you into court? Do they not blaspheme the fair name by which you have been called? If, however, you are fulfilling the royal law according to the scripture, you shall love your neighbor as yourself, you are doing well. But if you show partiality, you are committing sin and are convicted by the law as transgressors.
All right, and the last one is 1 Peter 13 to 16, and it says, therefore, having girded up the loins of your mind, being sober, set expectations perfectly upon the favor that is to be brought to you at the revelation of Yahshua Messiah. As obedient children, not conforming yourselves to the former lust of your ignorance. Instead, as the one who has called you is set apart, so also you should become set apart in all behavior. Because it is written, be set apart, for I am set apart.
Amen.
So I'm going to touch on the second half of this parasha. June took the first part, and I'm taking the second part. And the second part is Kedoshim. Kedoshim, it's basically set apart ones. It comes from the root kadosh, which we know is set apart or holy. So Kedoshim means holy ones or set apart ones. What does it mean to be a Kedoshim? This is something that we're learning now today and learning to be set apart. And in that 1 Peter we just read, we're supposed to be set apart in all of our actions and all of our behaviors. So when we're talking about cutting things out of the world, it's to take on the things of Yahshua. You are now Kedoshim, but you fully understand what that means? Do you live like it? And how do you know if you've never experienced it? And what instructions were given to those that were Kedoshim? Some of us are new in our walk in Torah observance, in Messianic faith, Hebrew roots, whatever you want to call it. Some of us are new. We're babies. We're still learning how to journey on this journey. So we don't necessarily know exactly what set apart is because we've never experienced it until we get around other believers. We have other believers that have been doing this walk for a long time, 30, 40, 50 years, and they're able to impart their wisdom of their understanding of the scriptures. We also have the scriptures that we're given, though, as well. And that's going to be our default for absolutely everything. If it's in the Torah and it says it's in the Torah, we can believe that it's true. If there are other things that are being said out there that are not in the Torah, these are in addition to, so no credence should be given to them. This is set apart. The Torah is set apart, and man's doctrines and traditions are not. So this is where we default, always on the Torah. This parasha is filled with instructions on how to be kadoshim. Set apart ones were instructed to guard and keep things kadosh, set apart, just as the Sabbath. We're supposed to keep and guard the Shabbat. There's a reason for that. Because it's been 1,700 years that the church has been trying to cover up the Shabbat and change it. They've claimed ownership in changing it when they haven't been given that authority. Yahweh is the only one that has the authority, and He sanctified the seventh day at creation. So that seventh day is set apart. It is kadosh. The Levites, their primary job was instructions to the tribes of Israel and to teach the Torah and how to guard and keep its commandments. Basically, it was setting up boundaries, establishing boundaries. And this is what these boundaries are. When June talked about it this morning, about bringing strange fire to Yahweh, that's not being set apart. That wasn't what was commanded. So as the Levitical priesthood, their primary job was to teach the children of Israel everything. And we read a lot of that today on what was to be done and what was not to be done. A lot of things we read today in the Torah, they were to be killed if they'd done these things. Cut off from their people. When Yeshua returns, that will be reinstituted. There will be no second chances. It'll be game on.
Right.
So how are we kadosh? Leviticus 11:44. For I am Yahweh, your Elohim, and you shall set yourselves apart, and you shall be set apart, for I am set apart. Also get it in Leviticus 19:2. We read it today. Speak to all the congregation, the children of Israel, and say to them, be set apart, for I, Yahweh, your Elohim, am set apart. He's the one who makes us kadosh. He's the one who makes us set apart, not ourselves. We cannot be set apart by works alone. There's nothing that we can do to be kadosh in Yahweh's eyes unless it's through Yeshua. He instructs us in ways that we are to behave, in things that we are to do and not to do, and keeping the Sabbath, biblical clean eating, His Moedim, His feast days. These are all His. They're nobody else's. It's commonly misinterpreted that, well, those belong to the Jews. That's not correct. It belongs to Him. He established it. Yeshua's instructions in Matthew 19. He said, no one is good except one, Yahweh. Yahweh is the only one who's good. But if you wish to enter into life, guard the commands. Keep my commandments. And we read it a couple times today that He did not come in His own words. He came in the words of His Father. It's right there in all four of the Gospels that we read today. There's nothing new under the sun. The New Testament is 70% quotes, direct quotes from the Old Testament. And when Yeshua was saying these things, you shall not murder. We find those in Exodus and Deuteronomy. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness. Respect your father and your mother. And you shall love your neighbor as yourself. This is part of the Shema that we speak of every week, that we say, that we hear and we obey His commands. Yeshua wasn't saying anything new at this time, but we find it in the Gospel account. He was referring directly to His Father's words in the beginning. Exodus 20:13 through 16. Do not murder. Do not commit adultery. Do not steal. Do not bear false witness against your neighbor. Deuteronomy 5:17 through 20. Do not murder. Do not commit adultery. Do not steal. Do not bear false witness against your neighbor. A third time, second or third witness, Leviticus, do not take vengeance or bear a grudge against the children of your people, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am Yahweh. Kadoshim, we see that Yeshua was not giving the disciples new commands at all. He was just teaching them the proper way to interpret the commands and to live them out. He was their living example. He is supposed to be our living example. If we say we are followers of Yahshua, there has to be evidence. There has to be fruit of that. Our actions, how we speak, how we act, what we do, those should be the light to the nations. And that's that verification that we are walking in His ways. Because far too many people claim to be a follower of Yahshua, but there's no fruit of that. They don't do anything that He does. They don't keep the Moedim. They don't keep the Shabbat. They don't eat clean. They say that's all been nailed to the cross. If that was true, Yahshua would have said so right here. He does not say that. He says, keep His Father's commands. He's reinforcing them over and over and over again, all the way up until His dying day. If we want to enter into eternal life, this is what we have to do. There's two things: to keep and guard the commandments. Those who are set apart, those are the ones that keep and guard the commandments. That is what we do. That's being Kadosh. And as a group of Kadosh people, we're Kadoshim. We're set apart people, a set apart nation. Yeshua's promise to the disciples, Matthew 19, 16 through 30. When the son of Adam sits on the throne of his esteem, you who have followed me in the rebirth shall also sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Everyone who has left houses, who have left brothers, sisters, fathers, mothers, wife, children, for my name's sake, for His name, shall receive 100-fold, and shall inherit everlasting life. But many who are first will be last, and those that are last will be first. There's importance in His name. There's a reason His name has meaning. It's not a transliteration. His name actually means Yah is salvation. This is the only name that is salvation, that brings salvation. He says it Himself, for His name's sake. It's important that we believe that. A lot of us here have cut out family members. Well, we haven't cut them out. They cut us out because they think that we're weird, or we're part of a clique or a cult, or they don't understand anything that we're going through. But when we try to show them the Word, show them that this is what the Messiah said to do, this is what the Bible truly says, not what some guy in the pulpit is saying, we refer to the Bible. We have each other now. We're brothers and sisters, and we're here to help one another on this walk, on this journey, through this life, into eternal life. This is what we do. And this is ingrained deeply into us, and everybody that's come sees it on the very first day, can understand that we are truly exhibiting love like Yeshua did. When Yeshua loved His disciples and He served them and washed their feet, that's the type of servant leadership and servant love that Yeshua had. That's the type of love that we have for one another. We're here to do anything we can to help you along your walk, because you're helping us along our walk as well. We're walking together, arm in arm. Leviticus 18, 4 through 5. Do my right rulings and guard my laws to walk in them. I am Yahweh, your Elohim, and you shall guard my laws and my right rulings, which a man does and lives by them. I am Yahweh. In Mark, Yeshua's instructions mimic, again, what the most important command is. And he says, Deuteronomy 6, 4 through 5, he directly quotes it. Hear, O Israel, Shema. Yahweh your Elohim, Yahweh is one. And you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, with all your being, and with all your might. Then they asked what the second greatest command was. And he said this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. The rest of the Torah and the prophets hang off of these two commands. When these two commands are put up and we look at them side by side, it's like reading the 10 Commandments over and over. The first 4 are designated to the Father, and the next 6 are dedicated to loving our neighbor. These are things that we don't do if we love our neighbor. We don't lie to him. We don't steal. We don't bear false witness. This is how we show love. There are no other commandments that are greater than these. These are the 2 greatest. This comes right out of Yeshua's mouth. Deuteronomy 6, 4 through 5, there it is. We say it every week. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. And Leviticus 19:18. Deuteronomy 4:35. You've been shown to know that Yahweh himself is Elohim. There is no one besides him. There are no other mighty ones besides him. He is the only one. Kadoshim, we see it here again. Yeshua was not giving his disciples new commands. He was reinforcing his Father's commandments. And what did Yeshua agree with what the scribes stated in this section? That keeping the two commands is much more than all of the burnt offerings and offerings together. All of them, of all time. Keeping these two commands are greater. And Yeshua said, you are not far from the kingdom of Yahweh. If we do these two commands, as Yeshua has set us out to do, we are not far from the kingdom. Leviticus 18, 4 through 5 again, reinforces doing Yahweh's right rulings and his commands and guarding them and keeping them. They're his. He's set apart. We need to be set apart. In Luke, Yeshua's instructions in Luke 10, 25 through 37. What is written in the Torah and how do you read it? You have answered correctly. Do this and you will live. Talking about everlasting life. Keep the commandments. You will inherit everlasting life. And here's a big kicker. Who is the neighbor in this account of Luke? Yeshua described it. Because there's a lot of different things and opinions out there of who your neighbor is supposed to be. Yeshua made it very clear in this parable who our neighbors are. Was it the Pharisee or the priest that stopped and helped that person? No. It was a Samaritan, somebody that did not even go to the same synagogues or have the same beliefs or whatever. They're the one that helped the fallen man. They're the one that paid his way. That is your brother. So that to me is speaking that mankind. When I was listening to reading the Torah this morning, it was very profound in a couple of them where it was talking about don't put a stumbling block before the deaf and the blind. To me, I see that as the Christian church. They are blinded right now, and they may not be hearing it, so we should not condemn them, and we should not put stumbling blocks before them. This was reinforced to me today, because I've often talked down about them. That's me condemning them, and for that I seek forgiveness. They're in a position where we were once, where we were blind, we were deaf, we didn't hear it, we didn't want any part of it, but here we are today. So there is hope. We should be that hope. We should be that light. Go ahead, brother.
I remember sitting around, I used to get really bitter about all that. I was mostly bitter about how I was lied to, primarily, right? Ultimately, that's Hasatan. He's the father of lies. I remember sitting there being really bitter, and I heard the Father say to me, you used to walk like that. I walk worse than that. So it's kind of like, it took me a while to kind of let off. I'm still working on it, you know what I mean? But yeah, having mercy for those who don't know and don't understand.
It's easy to get frustrated, especially with our family, because we've seen the change, and we want them to be on this journey so bad. We don't want to see them destroyed. We want it more than anything, but it's not their time. We planted the seed. It's up to the Father to water that seed. If His will be done and they're chosen, they will come along, and we will see them again. But we have to forge ahead. We have to keep going. It says right here in this parasha that we would lose brothers and sisters and husbands and wives and mothers and fathers. As a human being, it's one of the toughest things to do is to lose somebody, and they're not that far away. They're still alive, but they don't want to associate with you anymore because you're too righteous and they're too much of a sinner. They don't understand the gravity of the situation. So our neighbor, we as brothers and sisters, we were able to identify that those in the faith are our brothers and sisters, but our neighbors are those around us, those people that we interact with every day. We talked about it a few weeks ago. When we're walking outside, we are representing our King. And if we're representing Him in a false manner, then that's shame on us. And He'll correct us on that. But He's long-suffering. He's loving. He's met us where we're at. He's met each and every one of us at some point in our life and brought us together. So now that we share in this journey. Deuteronomy 6, and you shall love Yahweh, your Elohim, with all your heart, with all your being, and with all your might. Leviticus 19:18 again, don't take vengeance or bear a grudge against the children of your people, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am Yahweh. Leviticus 18:5, and you shall guard my laws and my right rulings, which a man does and lives by them. I am Yahweh. Kedoshim. So we see here for the third time that Yeshua was not giving the disciples any new commandments. He was continually reinforcing his Father's commands. This is what we do each and every week when we read the Torah. We're reinforcing those commands. And when it comes after Sukkot, we start at the beginning again in Bereshit. And like Brother June said, each year we learn something new. It may not be every week, but we will learn something new, and that another layer of the Torah will be peeled back, and our understanding will be so much greater and deeper. We have a greater appreciation, a greater love for the Father. That's us becoming closer to Him. The closer that we get to the Father, the harder Hasatan is trying to get in between us, find a chink in that armor, and bring us down. That's his mission. His time is limited. So when we continue to set ourselves apart, he is going to attack us in different various ways. Through the Father and being in His Word every week, we have the strength to endure. What was Yeshua's response to the learned one of the Torah after he answered Yeshua's questions? You have answered correctly. Do this, and you will live. This is in reference to the two greatest commandments again. To love Yahweh Elohim with all your heart, and to love your neighbor as yourself. Can I get an amen on the account of 2 or 3 witnesses? We just seen in all 3 Gospels the same thing over and over and over. And it's a repeated message for a reason. This is how we are to be kadosh, set apart. This is that second part of the teaching from the Parasha today. To be set apart, we don't do these things. There seems to be quite a pattern here, and we talk about that a lot. Each and every week that we have these patterns. Again, do my right rulings. This is Yahweh, not the Jews. This is Yahweh. Guard His laws and commands. He is our Elohim and nobody else. There's no other mighty one other than Him. And His right rulings we guard. And if we do them, we shall live. He is Yahweh. He has that promise. Has that covenant that Brother June talked about. We're in covenant when we cross over like Abraham and everybody else. We cross over. We turn away from the world. Turn away from our fleshly, lustly ways and seek a more righteous way to live. Other Tanakh references and all the rest of the verses. I wanted to keep this a little bit short because there is so much to talk about. I know a lot of people have a lot of questions. But we see over and over again exactly how the Torah and the Tanakh are referenced within the Brit HaDasha. They are direct quotes. It's not rereading it. It's not rewriting it. When these people, this is what we have to understand, because we have some new people that are new to the walk and new to the faith. Back then, they didn't have Bibles. They didn't have the Word readily at their fingertips like we do. They had to hear the Word at the synagogue on Shabbat each and every day, or each and every week. And it took years to be able to memorize that. So when they were quoting this, they knew forward and backwards, upside and down, and side to side, the Torah and the Tanakh. They knew everything. So when they referenced just a small section of it, it wasn't just that section they're talking about. They were talking about that entire book. That entire book is applicable to us. This is what they're trying to tell us. As Kedoshim, we are redeemed. We belong to Him. We don't belong to ourselves anymore. We're asked to love Him and walk in His ways. And the Bible defines love. If you love me, keep my commandments. So keeping the commandments is how we identify to our Father and to Yeshua that we love them, that we are continually doing this. We're no longer slaves to our flesh. A lot of us, like Brother June was saying this morning, that darn goat likes to come back. You know, we send it out to the wilderness, and a couple weeks later, that goat's coming back. That's slave to our flesh. Those are the things that are most difficult to cut out. But we find that when we do these things, how many blessings the Father gives us, how much understanding He gives us, how much closer He draws us nearer to Him. If we weren't to be set apart, He wouldn't be drawing us close. As redeemed, Kedoshim, we do not live like we lived before. And if we go back to living like we're living, we really haven't changed. We really haven't had that teshuvah moment. We don't walk like that anymore in any aspect. We are embarrassed of some of these things. I know I am. I'm embarrassed about some of my past. But it's my past that's made me who I am today. Without everything that's happened in my life, it would not have led me here. So I have to be thankful for all those crazy and goofy things I did as a Gentile, because it brought me that much closer and it's got me that much more understanding now. We constantly cut away those things of the old and put on new. And we talk about the parable of the wineskin. You can't put new wine in an old wineskin. It'll just burst. So we're not trying to put on those old garments. We're trying to put on the new garments of Yeshua, to be washed in that blood, in that atonement, that covering. He is what sets us apart. Biblical love is kadosh. We have free will to follow His commands or not. Those of us that follow have a heart to obey, and the faith that He is our Elohim. We desire to do His ways. We want to do His ways, not our own and not the ways of the world. Those that do not follow, they don't have the heart to obey. They actually have a heart of rebellion and disobedience. Therefore, He is not and cannot be their Elohim. They refuse His word. They refuse His commandments. They rebel directly against Him when we bring stuff forward to them. This is what the word says. They're rebellious. We have a couple of parables that we read about. The prodigal son and lost son. Rebellion. We were all there at one time, but now we're here. We can't turn back to that prior way. 1 Peter 14, as obedient children, not conforming to ourselves or the former lusts of our ignorance. Instead, the one who called you as kadosh, you also become kadosh in all behavior, because it is written, be set apart, for He is set apart. In the very first part of our Torah portion today, we read, Aaron lost 2 sons because they did something they were not commissioned to do. How hard was that for Aaron to watch his 2 sons go, and then the father start telling him, now, do I have your attention? This is how we're going to do business now. From now on, this is what I demand of you. And if I don't get it, this is what's going to happen. So we look at it from our aspect. If we've ever lost a child, some of us have. It's the most gut-wrenching and heartbreaking thing, and some people never recover from it. Others are able to recover, but there's heartbreak there. Aaron had to be heartbroken because of his son's disobedience, but he had to be thankful for the Father's long-suffering and love that He had for him to direct him. Biblical love is kadosh. Deuteronomy 11:1. And you shall love Yahweh your Elohim and guard His charge, even His laws and His right rulings and His commands always. Deuteronomy 30:16. In that I'm commanding you today to love Yahweh your Elohim, to walk in His ways, and guard His commandments and His laws and His right rulings. John 14:15. If you love me, you shall guard my commandments. John 14:21. He who possesses my commandments and guards them, it is he who loves me. And he who loves me shall be loved by my Father, as I love him and manifest myself to him. John 14:23. Yeshua answered him, if anyone loves me, he shall guard my word. And my Father shall love him, and we shall come to him and make our stay with him. John 15:10. If you guard my commandments, you shall stay in my love, even as I've guarded my Father's commands and stay in His love. There's that example. That's the end-all be-all example that we have to have right there. Yeshua followed His Father's commands. We're following Yeshua's commands and the Father's commands as well. 1 John 5:2-3. By this we know that we love the children of Yahweh, when we love Yahweh and guard His commandments, for this is the love for Yahweh, that we guard His commands. That's the biblical definition of love, is keeping the commands. It's kedoshim. So how do we become kedoshim? By keeping the commandments, being set apart, kadosh, holy, in some translations of the Bible. We don't keep them because we're forced to keep them. We keep them because we love it, and He loves us. We understand biblical love to be different than the Western understanding of emotional love. We've tried to put this feelings or whatever we have as love, but when the Bible says what love is, it's keeping the commands. That's how the ultimate way to show love to somebody, especially the Father, is we keep His commands. And we here at Natzarim Yahshua Family Fellowship, we like to let our Torah light shine throughout all of northern Arizona. We keep the days set apart that He has set apart. We keep His feast. We eat biblically clean. We love our neighbor as ourselves. We gather. We study. We help each other along in this life because we're not going to make it on our own. Right. On our own, we're weak and there's no strength. But together, we're stronger in these numbers. And there's more love with that. There's more understanding that comes with that. Each of us has a gift. Some of us have not yet found out what that gift is, but we each have a gift that the Father has given us. And it's to share with the assembly and to share with the world until Yeshua gets back. Because I tell you, we've never been closer to the return of Yeshua than we are right now. We look at all the things that are going on, all this stuff that's going down around us. We've been protected. The Father's protected us. We're set apart. We keep ourselves set apart. He's keeping us. And those that endure till the end, they shall see Him. They shall endure till the end, and they shall inherit eternal life. Open it up for questions, comments, midrash. Yes, sir, in the back.
So, when we love our neighbors, that would be applying Torah to our neighbors. Yeah. So they can see the light of Torah in actions.
Amen. Tender.
I was just going to comment on how cool it is that we're all together. We're not living in one of the states that are like basically following martial law right now, and that we're able to meet together and you don't have to worry about the cops coming and shutting us down or hauling us off there.
Jacques?
I also just wanted to point out Kadosh being set apart, being holy. In our translation, that word means saints. Kadoshim, saints. And so, if someone ever, wanted to know what is the things that would truly make you a saint, it's what you're missing out there. Because to be a saint is to be Kadoshim. So, just one person.
Tamara, and then we'll go this gentleman, and then.
Well, something jumped out at me regarding this in Leviticus, the reading, 19:18.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't really read this that way before, but when all the stuff going on this morning with somebody, nobody here, it said, you shall not avenge, I'm sorry, it's 19:17. You shall not hate your brother in your heart. You shall in any wise rebuke your neighbor and not suffer sin upon him. And so what I heard there is to shut my mouth and to not rebuke in the face of flagrant sin is to hate my brother, and it's to suffer sin upon him. That was interesting.
Part of that, what I was talking about with that newfound information, I've been guilty of that recently, that I've not really understood what hate was until reading in the scriptures of, okay, you're putting a stumbling block. And then we have in the Brit portion where Yeshua is talking about the log in your own eye. Remove that log before you get the splinter out of your brother's eye.
Because the world tells us, and we've been, parts of this, the 501c3 Sunday organizations tell us it's hate to confront somebody about sin. And this is saying the exact opposite.
Yeah. We love them, that's why we show them. And it's not our words, but they take it personally all too often. That, well, you're condemning me. No, ma'am, no, sir, I am not. The word is condemning you. It's not me. I'm trying to show you the error of your ways. That's all.
And then you get your sins pointed out, and you have to say, guilty as charged, I repent.
Yeah, going back to where we saw Yahshua said, keep my commandments. I have kept my Father's commandments. So when people ask you Yahshua's commandments, most Christians will say, we only have to keep good commandments. How do we explain to them that is keeping the Torah? All the commandments. Because it says, Yahshua says, keep my commandments. So how do we explain that to them?
Using some of these verses that we showed up here today, that he's not coming in his own esteem or his own glory. He's coming in the glory of the Father. And when he says, I keep my Father's commands, therefore you keep my commands, you keep the Father's commands. In all of the portions today, it was talking about don't steal, don't murder, don't kill, don't do all these things. Those are all direct quotes from what they're calling the Old Testament, and they're trying to throw it out. But Yahshua is saying absolutely, totally different than that.
Yeah, because they kind of like say, no, we only need to keep 2 commandments, and that's it. That's their, we call it the objection, to keep the Torah. And we should have a real answer for that. So.
John and John and 1 John.
Jerry, you had your hand up. You're next. And then we'll go back to Stan, and then to Mike Josiah, and then Morgan. Oh, I thought you had your hand up. Okay, Stan.
Those of us who've been parents of that, we're admonished to chastise our children by rebellion far from them, okay? And when we see that kid, as a grandparent, trying to get in the pool fence, we're going to go over there and give them a swat and let them know you can't get in there because it's not safety. Well, the same thing with our neighbors. If we truly love them, we're going to tell them the truth. We're not going to hold back. We're not going to tell them what they want to hear. We're going to tell them what God wants them to hear. Or Yahweh.
The brother here.
I was just going to fill in with
Oh, I can't see his hand. I'm sorry, brother.
what you've already said about how do we show the other people the 2 commandments: love Yahweh with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. And like you said, that love Yahweh with all your heart, mind, and soul is the first 4 commandments, right? Show His name, obey the Sabbath, right? Don't have any idols, okay? The next one, do not murder, all that is loving your neighbor as yourself. If you would kill yourself, then kill your neighbor. If you don't, love your neighbor, right? Don't take don't want anything, don't have envy for him or anything that he has. And then you said his neighbor is not actually the person who lives next door to you. It could be, but it's the general world, the heathens in the world, right? The non-understanders. Those are the ones we need to go by.
Okay, we got Mike, Josiah, Morgan, Brian, Lana, and then Jason, then Sean. You guys got to remember that. I don't have a pen today.
I was gonna say I like that question, because I'm always thinking about how do I approach my friends who are evangelical Christians, or I'd rather go to reform looking for that Catholics. They will frequently invent a new set of rules other than the Jewish rules.
They always like that.
Yeah, and they like to chew. Well, just love God with all your heart and love your neighbor. And it kind of makes it less well defined, doesn't it? It makes it like, it's all fuzzy. I just have to have these good feelings toward them, and we're okay. It would not include that passage in Leviticus 19 where it says, well, if you see your brother sinning, why wouldn't you tell him something, say something to him, because you're allowing him to basically, you're hating him in your heart by not saying something. Unless you have something within yourself that Yahshua says take care of your own sin first, of course, that's clear. So the thing that first comes to my mind, we're kind of editing something I wrote, but basically that's just how you talk to people about the laws that I was writing. And one of the things about that particular scripture in Romans that we read earlier, Romans 13, verse 9 and 11, it says, all of the law is briefly comprehended in this one statement, love your neighbor as yourself, because he who loves his neighbor has fulfilled the law. It says here in verse 9, for this, you don't commit adultery, don't murder, don't steal, don't covet. And if there's any other commandment, which there's lots of them, it is summed up in this saying, love your neighbor as yourself. You love him, you're going to obey the commands. So loving equals obeying the command. The commands equals loving them. That's the same passage also that is quoted by Yahshua. It says all the law and prophets hang on these two. So they want to invent these two new laws. They also have another set of laws that they say, well, we obey the law of Christ, they'll say. Yeah. They'll say that one too. Very dispensational, theological semi kind of thing. You say, well, the thing is, are you obeying the laws that Christ say of his commands when he says, obeying Moses and the prophets? Because Matthew 5 is right there. You guys don't know that. Matthew 5, 17 through 19. If you go all the way through 19, makes it real clear. He's not saying that he's come to fulfill the law so that you don't have to do it anymore. He says, even if you break one of the least of these commandments, you're going to call these. But he who does them and teaches other people to do them, well, wait a minute. Is that what they're doing? Because Yeshua is telling me to do them and teach you to do them also. That's what he's saying. That's really, wow, how can you get around that? They figure out some way to weasel out of that somehow. But it's clear. Just read the whole passage all the way to verse 19. I got a bunch of other things in Romans, but I'll save it for later.
Josiah.
So that was, I'm sure you've already heard of it in 60 or twice like that. I hope I don't sound like a broken record. But one thing that stands out, the word fulfill. We go back to how did Yahshua fulfill the law? Well, he did it very meticulously. He did it from the heart. It was in his nature, and it came out into everything that he did and defined who he was. So when we see love fulfills the law, well, this can't just be a vague notion, because we can't say, oh, I'm going to love my neighbor, but now I'm going to steal his stuff. But then if you take the law, thou shalt not steal, it seems simple enough to define, thou shalt not steal. So if I take something without someone's permission and with no intent to return, that would be stealing. But there are times in the Torah where it says you can do that and it's not stealing. So it's not simple enough just to say, thou shalt not steal, or a general principle, love your neighbor as yourself, because all of the detail is the way in which you fulfill those two basic things. So really, you can't have one without the other.
Morgan?
So one of the problems that we get with people is they want to separate from Yahweh and Yeshua, where they would say, God and the Son of God, right? That they're two completely separate entities, because one behaves in a different way from the other. So if we go to John 14, when Philip asks, like, well, show us the Father and it's enough, and Yeshua says, well, have I been with you so long you can't see me for who I am? Don't you know that if you've seen me, you've seen the Father? I am in him, he is in me. And there's been many times in Scripture that Yeshua attested to his authority. But then when we go into Matthew chapter 22, when he's going over, and you shall love Yahweh your Elohim, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself, it follows it the same. On these two commands hang all the Torah and the prophets. So there's several places throughout the Scripture where you can see the parallels to everything. But right here in this one statement, he sums it up with that everything else that is spoken as a commandment, everything that a prophet has said, all of it boils down to these two. Because if you love Yahweh, you're going to serve Him and observe His commands. Therefore, being one of His commands is love your neighbor as yourself. And if you love your neighbor, you're not going to treat them bad. That's where all the other scripture is laid out pertaining to the law or Torah is not to treat people bad.
I think Brian was next.
I was going to just add to it. I agree with your heading up there. We understand biblical love to be different than the Western understanding of emotional love. I hate to say it, but we've all turned into a bunch of crybabies. You know, you go to church and you say, you know, whether my lawnmower broke down, I can't mow my yard. Well, I'll pray for you, brother. See, they're not like Paul, James, brother of Jesus, Yeshua says, be doers. See, the Torah makes us doers of love. Christianity wants this emotional. I feel your pain. I'll pray for you, brother. They forget to pray for you when they're watching the football game. So they're a bunch of, you know what an excuse is? It's a lie with a reason.
Yeah.
So to give an excuse for not being there and doing the Torah is nothing like love.
Yeah. What good does it say to go and be filled?
Yeah.
You're not going to get from the garment.
Thank you, brother. I think it was
one of them.
Oh, yeah, sorry. You're out of my line of sight right there.
Okay. So all of this to me kind of boils down to, you know, why do we read in the Torah what we're supposed to be doing? And he says it right here. Well, he says it several different times, but especially right here. And he's talking about, so the land doesn't want you out. But it's even goes beyond that. We have to keep the assembly of Israel clean. If we don't, and it goes back again to clean and unclean. What is clean and what is unclean? If you allow uncleanness within the congregation, Yahweh's not there. This is in our body. If we eat unclean, He's not going to be there. This is my relationship when I, was saved under the name of Jesus Christ. Yes, I was saved. But my relationship then, as it is now, is night and day. Because I have submitted more to Him and He has come into me more. So the more that I strip away the whatever He's talking about here, all this uncleanness, all of this stuff that He's saying, this is what Egypt did, this is what the Canaanite do, this is what all of these other people do. I don't want you to do that. I'm putting you at a higher standard so that I can be with you. That's the whole point of everything. It's for God to dwell with us and be in us and continue to give us His Holy Spirit. If we don't have that, we are empty. We have nothing. Absolutely nothing.
You bring up a great point of what these scriptures that we're reading here in the last few weeks and today separated. You have clean and unclean. You have defiled and set apart. Now, there's some misunderstandings out there, so maybe we can try to help clear some up if you have this misunderstanding. Not all uncleanness is sinful. It's not all sin. There are some things, women's menstrual period, that is unclean. That's not a sin to do that. But all sins are unclean. So there's that differentiation that a sin is a sin is a sin. It makes you unholy. It may not have that same penalty of death or whatever, but we've seen today that, if you do something, you mikvah, you bathe, you wash your clothes, and then in the evening, then you become clean again. So there's some misunderstandings out there from different people that I follow online, and so that was it was mentioned by a brother in the faith like that. Not all sin is unclean, but not all uncleanness is sinful.
Yeah, just a point so you guys can realize. Idolatry is having a false Yah, a false idol. Okay? People today have a Yah of their own convenience. Okay? That's idolatry. They're guilty of idolatry. I used to, when I was in the world, I would say, I want to get married, but I gotta sample a few apples in the barrel before I find the sweetest one. I was just justifying my own sin. Okay? You can't do that. We have to realize that when we make an image of Him to our own liking, that is idolatry.
This, I just wanted to mention because we've already been talking about when Yeshua came and what did it mean that He fulfilled the law. We know that He fully explained the law. We know that He walked it out. And we know that he preached to keep it. And then we also know that the church is teaching that He died so that you're not condemned anymore and you don't have to worry about sin anymore. But that's obviously not what we find in Scripture. And so in 1 John 2, it says, "And He Himself is an atoning offering for our sins, and not for ours only, but also for all the world. And by this we know that we know Him, if we guard His commandments. The one who says, 'I know Him,' and does not guard His commands is a liar, and the truth is not in him. But whoever guards His word, truly the love of Elohim has been perfected in him. By this we know that we are in Him. And the one who says that he stays in Him ought himself also to walk, even as He walked." And so that pertains a lot to what we've been talking about, and a lot of what's been in the message. But it also points out that the message that's being taught in the church shows that He is not in the modern day church, is what I'm saying. I don't mean the church as a whole, but it says, "The one who says, 'I know Him,' and does not guard His commands is a liar, and the truth is not in him." And they might be liars not by choice or recognition. They don't obviously see that they are lying. They're being raised by wolves, is what's going on, and they don't even know that they're wolves.
Mercy trying to
Jacques, and then Mick, and then Brian again. Thank you, brother, for sharing for that.
So I wanted to touch on that thing about how, of course, to love someone is also trying to correct them, lovingly correct them whenever they're not following Torah. And because a lot of people think, well, if you correct someone that you're not, that you don't love them, but you're judging, but that's not the case. I'll give an example. It's not correcting someone before, but the case where my family thought when I was judging someone, it turns out years later, a decade later, they realized, oh no, I was the only one who cared enough to mention. And that was quite a long time ago now. I started to say to my mother, Mom, I'm really concerned. There's this and this and this thing about you physically that it's concerning me. I love you, Mom. I'm really concerned. And my father and my sister and my brothers would all say, you're picking on her. Stop about her fault. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm saying she's the doctor of us. So you're picking on her. And my entire family estranged me from all of them. They didn't talk to me. My father, he died last year without ever heard of me. I didn't really like me. But about 3 years ago, my family did start to realize, and now they're very much aware, that, oh no, actually I was put out because what happened is, my mother, at that time, had the early stages of what is Parkinson's-like illness. Now my mother is very, very late in that illness, and they're realizing, oh wait, all those things that he was saying so long ago, he was trying to let her know that she had basically Parkinson's. And the real breakthrough for my family whenever they came to this realization that I wasn't sick and I was showing great love is 3 years ago I called my mother and I saw her on the phone. I said, Mom, you're not making sense today, because I used to speak to my mom daily on the phone. I said, Mom, did you have a stroke last night? And I said, hey, can I talk to Sarah? To my sister. I said, sure. Mom sounds really confused there and talk. Has she sat in this here all morning? And she went, yeah. I said, do you think Mom had a stroke last night? And she went, I guess you're probably right. She probably did. So they took her to the doctor, and turns out she had had a bad stroke. And it's like, and that's whenever one of my brothers and my sister realized that even though they're living with her in Indianapolis, none of them knows that she has stroke. I live across the country. I noticed. So that shows that I'm not picking on her. It was pointing out someone's faults because I love them. I'm concerned that I want them to get better as opposed to just letting them continue to get worse and worse without treatment.
Thank you. You got Mick, Brian, and June.
Okay, so somebody over here mentioned another yacht, having another yacht, and basically it brought me to the golden calf, right? Where it talks about they had because in the churches they'll commonly teach you that they fell back into worshiping old gods, but that's not what it says in it. It said, "This is the God, the Elohim, who brought you out of Egypt." Right? Tomorrow is a festival to Yahweh, right? And then when we go to 2 Corinthians 11:4. Right, and depending on the translation you have, it uses different names, but it says, "For indeed, he who is coming proclaimed another Yahshua, whom we have not proclaimed, or if you receive a different spirit, which we have not received, a different good news which you have not accepted, you put up with it well enough." And I think that's really what has happened is we all got sold the golden calf, because it's more than, these things are more than just pronunciations. Because in the word Shem actually means, it does mean a name, but it's more, I think more importantly, it means his reputation, his fame, his glory, memorial and monument, right? So if you could say the right name and totally be teaching the wrong thing, right? Yeah. We got groups in this town right now talking about Yeshua and preaching lawlessness. That's a different Yeshua, right? That's not clean. So the most important thing that we need to understand is the character, and I think Morgan was really appreciated what you said when you started talking about how to try to separate the Father and the Son. When it says all over the place, I am in the Father, He is in me, and I am in Him. And then before Abraham was, I am. They picked up stones. They knew exactly what he was saying. That's not. It wasn't a big wish to him. He said, "You make yourself equal," and he never once said, "Oh, I'm sorry, forgive me."
No.
He spoke with authority.
He spoke with authority on that topic. So knowing the character of your Mashiach, I think that's like the biggest thing that happened. We got sold another Messiah, a wood nickel, as one Baptist pastor said.
Yeah.
We got a golden calf running around here. So.
One question for you, please.
Okay.
So when he said before Abraham was, he said, "I am." What was the name he said then? What was, instead of "I am," what did he say? Because I am is a translation. So what he was supposed to say? He said.
Well, the existing one, like Yahweh,
So maybe he pronounced them.
He may have, yes. He may have very well been doing that. It may have been.
And that is why they wanted to stone him.
Yeah, because Yahweh existed. Even if he was saying, "I was here before this mortal body, I was here before that," it's like, well, no one else was like that. They knew what he was saying. They knew he was saying.
Isn't "I am" the left half, the beginning and the end?
No, it is Yod-Heh Vav-Heh.
He's Yod-Heh Vav-Heh.
It is Yod-Heh Vav-Heh, and all the variants of it mean something like to exist, I existed, or self-existent ones. Yeah, it has that weight behind it. Yahweh is created. Yahweh is just a memorial for us. His real name, I probably can't pronounce it. You know what I mean? It's beyond us. So.
It's all encompassing.
Yeah.
Thanks, bro. Brian, and then June, then Josiah.
I want to bring up the who's your neighbor. What do you guys think about this viewpoint? We're told in the Brit HaDasha the greatest of the characteristics
that we can have is love, right? So you've got these Yehudim, and they're priests. They might be on their way to the temple, and they see these Yehudi who may be dead or dying. If they had a job to do in the temple, they, by touching him or having to do it, they've made themselves unclean, right? Yeah. So two men who are supposed to represent Yah won't even help their brother. Okay? But then you've got this Samaritan who is like a half-breed Jew and something else. And they don't consider him their neighbor. But he's walking down the road, he says Yehudim, and he has compassion. He has love for this man. And he takes care of him, he dresses his wounds, he takes him to the hotel, the inn, and gives him all the money he's got, says, fix him up, and if he requires more money, I'll give him more money. So what do you think about the viewpoint that, yeah, following all of Yah's commands are good, but like Brother Mike said, being unclean is not a sin. So have love for your fellow man, for your brother. The two greatest is to love Yah and to love your neighbor, right? But how can you love Yah if you don't love your neighbor? Right? So you really have to understand the Torah so that you can apply it in harmony. So Yah would approve of what you did, even if it made you unclean. That's true.
You're fulfilling his commands.
Go ahead, Brother June.
So, Genesis Bereshit 1, in the beginning, Elohim created the heaven and the earth. John 1, in the beginning was the Word, Debar. Yep. And the Debar was with Elohim. And the Debar was Elohim. And then the Debar came.
Right there.
Debar. Yes, the Word. So, in the beginning, the one that's speaking and talking with Moshe is the Word. He is the Word. Right? Yahshua is the Word. So that lawgiver, the Torah, the one that gave the Torah, is Yahshua.
Yeah, amen.
And he doesn't change.
Right. Not at all.
Not at all. I mean, if he opens up this part of the book, he's according to Brother Michael, 70% of what's been written here is directly quoted in here, in this part. And with Brother, that's exactly right, brother. You know, there's some uncleanness that if you ask forgiveness and you want to be clean, you will be clean back. But the problem is, if a person wants to stay in that uncleanness and harden his heart and will not teshuvah from that uncleanness, that's where the Ruach HaKodesh will turn away. Because Elohim, the Word, said, I'm not going to live in your midst with uncleanness. That's why he said, okay, put me a set-apart place and mold it with some nice gold and really nice, because I am holy. I don't live in a very, the common. I don't live in a common spot. And nobody should be touching it, even though they have good intentions, like Uzzah, right?
Yeah, he touched the ark.
He got good intentions. It's gonna fall. I'm gonna touch it because I'm gonna straighten it up. But he perished, right? There's some people with good intentions, like Native and Abiyu. Oh no, we can observe, but we will be offering. This fire is much better fire. But Yahweh said, my fire is the holy fire. They won't go out. So just touching with that, he is the lawgiver. Yes. So he's not gonna say, hey, I'm gonna repeat or remove my word, because he's the one that says, I don't change. I am the Aleph and the Tav.
You know, if they'd been carrying it by its poles instead of putting it in a trailer, it never would have took over.
They didn't follow the instruction.
They didn't follow instructions.
Yeah. Brother Josiah, then Morgan, then Mick, and Sandra. Did I miss anybody yet?
Stand.
Joseph.
No,
Or is it Mike? Go ahead. If it was your hand.
I mean, yeah, it was after June, but anyway, so understanding there's different degrees, I'll call it. I don't know what else to call it. Of Yahweh's expression on the earth. He has the temple and the inner court and the holy of holies. These are different like levels or degrees of his presence, right? So he will let us get close, and he makes provision for us to get closer, to be washed, to be cleansed, to become a part of the people of Israel, the Hebrews who crossed over, so we can get close. And there's certain things like we were talking about. It's true. There's certain things that are just clean, but they're not immoral. And I like how you delineated that. There's different codes of his law. Some is moral, some we don't fully grasp, and he tells you, he instructs us about those. And I was just relating that to how me at my house, one day, we all have codes of what is clean and unclean too. One day I saw Nathan, my 3-year-old twin, out there in the front yard, and he picked up this little brown thing, and he's about, and it's something to talk about, right? And it's headed right for his mouth. And I just, you wouldn't expect me to be like, I wouldn't do this to my neighbor, but it's like I'm slapping his hand. Kaka, kaka! And I think that like I was relating that to my Father in heaven, Yahweh, is seeing me sometimes putting something, grabbing up something I'm not supposed to grab, and I'm bringing it to my mouth, or putting it in my mind or my heart, And he's saying, no, Kaka, don't do that. It's bad for you. Don't do that. So it's like, well, of course, it's his house. We're living in his house. He has house rules like I have house rules. Yeah. The people in the churches, as Gentiles, they have their own rules. They just have different rules. So we decide which the person we place ourselves under their authority, that person is his rules that we're going to follow. So if I want to go over to June's house, he has some rules about how I conduct myself in his house, and it makes perfect sense. It's not ridiculous because they think of it as being trying to think of superstitious almost, but it's not superstitious. It's just that I love my Father. I want to obey his rules. So relating that to Romans chapter 10, when it talks about if you confess Yeshua in Romans 10 as Lord and believe in your heart that he was risen from the dead. Let me read that passage again. It says here in verse 6, and Mike, to his credit, he brought all these things out too already. I was reading what he wrote on there. So man, you did a lot of study. You found all these scriptures how they relate to the Old Testament. This one relates to the Old Testament passage. I'll tell you in a second. So in verse 3 it says, for not knowing, we're going to start in verse 2. For I bear them witness that they have a zeal. I believe he's talking about the other brothers here. They have a zeal for God, but not in accordance with knowledge. For not knowing about Elohim's righteousness and seeking to establish their own righteousness, they did not subject themselves to the righteousness of Elohim. Well, all this argument between different groups is, well, whose set of rules are you following? Because to whom you make yourself a slave, that is your master. So if you're obeying somebody else's rules, well, you're obeying that master. It's his rule. They have a different rule. They say, well, you can do this, have a ham, and have free strays, or whatever you want to do. That's somebody else's rules. You're deciding which God you're following, right? Shabbat on Sunday. Shabbat on Sunday. Worshipping another God's set of rules. So here we go. Going on, it says that in verse 4, for Messiah is the end of the law of Torah for righteousness to everyone who believes. The end of the law for righteousness. Well, he's not. I want to avoid confusion here. That word "end" is the word "telos" in Greek, which many of you know already. It means it's the goal.
Yes.
The end is, that's where you're headed. It doesn't, but they like to interpret this as the end. It's like, okay, he cut it off. It's finished. Okay, well, now it's okay to commit fornication and adultery and murder, right? Well, no, we know that it's not true. So he could not be saying that. He could not be saying that. He's saying that Yahshua is the focal point of what I'm to live my life like, because he demonstrated walking out Torah perfectly to perfection. I may not reach there, but my goal is to get as close to him as possible. So then for Moses writes that a man who practices righteousness, which is based on the Torah, shall live by that righteousness. Great. That's good news. That's good. Verse 6, but the righteousness based on faith speaks thus. Do not say in your heart, who will ascend into heaven? That is to bring Messiah down. Or who will descend into the abyss? That is to bring Christ up from the dead. But what does it say? The word is near you, in your mouth and in your heart. That is the word of faith which we are preaching. Does anybody know where he's quoting from?
Deuteronomy 30.
Deuteronomy 30, that's right. And Deuteronomy 30, you go back and look at that, it's like, well, yeah, he's saying, Yah is telling his people, hey, look, my words are not hidden from you. They're not like on a different planet or at the bottom of the ocean. They're right here. What do you need to do? You need to teshuvah. You need to turn, go to them. Be washed by my provision for your washing. I want to cleanse you. I want to make you clean. You turn back to my word, my instructions, and I will clean you. He says right here that, what does it look like in Paul's description here? He says, so that's the very word we're preaching. We're preaching Deuteronomy 30, which is talking about repentance. The very same thing. That's the gospel message right here. And he says this is how he explains it next in verse 9, that if you confess with your mouth, Yahshua is your Lord, that is your king, your master. He's the one who tells you which rules to follow, in other words, right? If I'm saying he's my master, am I saying this hypocritically? Oh yeah, Jesus is my Lord. Well, if I don't mean that I'm bowing my knee to him and I'm going to follow his rules, then I'm speaking hypocritically. I'm just pretending. But that's not what he's talking. He's not talking about pretending here. He's talking about surrender to him as king when he says he's Lord, he's master. And then he says, you believe in your heart, that is faith, that Yah raised him from the dead, you shall be saved. Saved from what? It's your sin he wants to cleanse you from. And the guarantee of that was his resurrection. I'll stop right there.
Thanks, brother. So, Josiah, did you have something?
Here to do, yeah.
It's your turn then, Josiah.
So, going back to Nathan and Eve, he's not supposed to. We look at the word abomination in Scripture. People believe that it means something, so, like, detestable, but like horribly evil, wicked, unrecoverable, basically. Like you do this and you're lost forever. Really, when you look it up in the Hebrew, I believe I did a strong study on it once. It basically means disgusting.
There's several words.
When someone eats something they're not supposed to, you get that out of your mouth. That's disgusting.
Then you want to kiss me after that? Talk about getting close. I want to get close to this.
Now let's get like what you were talking
So we go back to Leviticus 18, where you read all this stuff that you're not supposed to do with various family members or too close. And it seems like the main point that God is making there is, this is disgusting. Don't do it. This is for your good that I'm telling you not to do it because it's not what I designed for you. And people will say of other laws, well, yeah, it says this is for you being the native born and the sojourner, but we're not native born and we're not sojourner, so that doesn't apply to us. Okay, but look at what it said there. That was also for the sojourner, for the native born. It doesn't say it's for the Gentiles or for modern Christians. It doesn't spell it out that way, but it's obvious Because you look at that kind of stuff, and once again, it's disgusting, and it's not God's plan for us. It's stuff that we would do well not to do, because it shortens our lives and brings judgment. So we can apply that to the rest of Scripture, saying, when something says, don't do this, don't do that, unless it's specified that this is only for a certain group of people, this is for you. So that was one thing. Now going back to the idea that Yahshua wrote the Torah, he spoke with such power in his life. Before Abraham was, I am, and then we read about how he's at the feast, and he gets up and they're like, oh, how does he do this? He's not educated, But this is the same power that we read in the Torah when a command is given from Mount Sinai. And he answers, I am Yahweh. End of sentence. Nobody's questioning it. And without his divinity, that kind of power wouldn't be there. It's the fact that he is the same being all along, unchanging, and one with the Father in purpose and will and being. Without that, what we would get is inconsistency, wavering, and basically modern Christianity, although I hate to say it. So that's that.
Do you have the these own model Bibles in your computer?
Yeah.
So we can show what he was reading in Romans 13:10. Verses 13:10 and 4. The Messiah is the end of the Torah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 13, the Messiah is the goal for the Torah.
Oh, that's in verse chapter.
That is, okay, that's verse 6. I want to clarify something on verse 6. Because the word that might be there is, it may not be the word but instead end. In the Greek text. In the Greek text. So there is, there's Christianity, they have those doubts there that they say but. But it might be the word and instead of right. See what I mean?
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
So if you see the verse number 6 on chapter 10, let's see what the word is.
It says.
And
Highlight 10:6.
Romans 10 verse 6. Romans 10 verse 6. Can you see what the Greek text?
God says, righteousness. Okay, so can you highlight that, Mike? Just like click on that until it turns red.
Yeah.
And then go up and select King James. King James Plus. Sorry.
Yes, sir.
And then see where it says but.
Okay.
See where it says G1161. If you just hover over.
Deh.
What does it say?
D-E-H. Deh.
Also and but, so you can put any of those in there.
Yes, but by the end.
You can put and.
Yeah. So that's what I was not, but because because I said no, this is a but he says but the justice that is in the faith. He says, don't say in your heart who will ascend to the Shamaim to bring down Mashiach. But it doesn't. I think it's not the word but and. So it was a wrong translated.
Because it's not a different thought, it's a continuation.
Exactly. It's a continuation. That's what I'm saying. Exactly.
And this is what we experience with translator bias. Each and every translator is biased in one way or another, so it behooves us to be the Bereans and go and study using eSword or interlinear to find out what the Hebrew really means, what it's really saying, and then finding it in comparison in the Brit HaDasha, and then also using the Septuagint. The Septuagint was a Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible a couple hundred years before Yeshua. So we have those words that can transition, but we do have translator bias, such as the King James. And here's one thing that we know that's a fact. The book of James, his name wasn't ever James, it was Yaakov, but it was in reference to King James. So there's a lot of things that we got to look out for.
And that is why, our brothers, the Jews, reject the Septuagint. Because they kind of like, back then when they translated the Septuagint, there was not this agenda of concealing the Messiah with the scriptures. But when they brought up these Hebrew texts, what they call them, the Masorah or Masorah, then they hit a lot of things regarding the Mashiach. In that text. That is why they reject the Septuagint. So I wanted to highlight it.
Like Isaiah 40, verse 6.
Exactly. And Isaiah 53.
All of Isaiah 53. Thank you, brother, for that input. Morgan, to you, brother.
So I was wanting to go on with what Bryce was talking about when you see the priest walk by this Jewish man refused to help. And then it was a Samaritan who was kind of considered like a mongrel group. That they were of low status, like what they would be considered as something disgusting, right? We're just going over and talking about abomination and things like that. That ties in with what we've just gone over in Acts 10 with Peter's vision and Cornelius, where we see that. So in verse 28 of Acts 10, and he said to them, Kefa, you know that a Yehudi man is not allowed to associate with or go to one of another race. But Elohim has shown me that I should not call any man common or unclean. And then if we go down to verse 54, and opening his mouth, Kefa said, truly I see that Elohim shows no partiality. But in every nation, he who fears him and works righteousness is accepted by him. He sent the word to the children of Israel, bringing the good news. Peace through Yahshua the Messiah. He is the master. And then jumping over to where we were in 1 Corinthians 5, where Paul is rebuking the church, for you are allowing unchecked sin that even the nations are like, yeah, we don't do that. And you are boasting about this. And we see that today at a lot of the churches. It's like they boast how accepting they are. We put a gay or LGBT whatever pastors, up in front. Look how progressive we are. It's like there's nothing more to the sun. You see the same thing here. When you see a group like the Pharisees or these priests that are like drawing so that their Zeke might not touch this man that's laying in the ditch. Walking on, it's someone who they would consider common and unclean, goes to that man's aid and goes above and beyond. Because it even speaks to me in that story that not only did he bandage his wounds, he took him to an inn. What money he had, he gave up front to say, take care of him, and whatever else it costs, I will pay when I come back. And that's, who's saying the innkeeper didn't have the tab or something like that, but he didn't care about that. He knew the right thing to do was take care of this man in need. And this is another rebuke to those who hold themselves above, that you consider yourself to be of this one class, that you have special status. Well, I tell you, it's one of those things, I tell you, this man you consider unclean, more righteous than you. And we see that time and again where the point is made by using the lowest of the low, the woman with the 2 pennies. I say to you, she is given more than all these rich men have. And that's why we can't get caught up, like Mike was saying, that we were in the place where a lot of these other people were. I was in a Baptist church eating my Easter ham and everything, like I see people doing now. So thankfully, I've been let out of that, and we're just casting those stones to everyone instead of trying to show them the light, trying to bandage their wounds when we see them laying there. We're no better than what we're warned against for these Pharisees.
We've seen with Yeshua too, with the Samaritan woman at Yaakov's well. He revealed himself to her, that she knew that he was the Mashiach. She went. He told her everything about her life. Oh, you speak the truth. She went and told her entire family that the Mashiach was here. So there's this, with the Samaritans being a lower class, and Yeshua bringing himself down to this class and to these people and the revelations that are there. We should not keep that word from anybody. We should be just like Yeshua and going out and telling everybody, because looks can be deceiving. Absolutely deceiving.
And that was unclean, right? That's what you were saying.
Yep.
But it was holier.
Yeah.
Than a snake.
Got Brother Nick.
Oh yeah, I want to go back to something Judah touched on a long time ago about being clean and going into, there are rules of being clean and whatnot, going into the tabernacle and whatnot, how it was originally in the midst. You were clean or unclean, and this determined whether you could come draw near. Mike Cloud was talking about it too, how you draw this or when you draw near to him. Originally, when they were brought out of Egypt, when he saved them, the tabernacle was put in their midst. And then they started grumbling and fighting and whatnot, and finally he got angry and he moved his tabernacle outside the camp. Right? So it all got moved out. And then the other thing too is we were talking about bringing, we have they had Egypt in them when they came out. It took 40 years to bring the Egypt out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, it didn't bring the Egypt out. Most of them had to be killed before the Egypt got out. So there was we've had several thousand years of people twisting it. And just to be completely honest, Yeshua said they were twisting it in. That's why he had to come. And then this is why the temple had to be destroyed, because it's like now you put this big thing up, it's become an idol. But it's no longer what it was meant to be. We're going to tear it down, right? I'm going to tear it down. You can't have an idol no more. Now you're going to have to do things differently. There will be a day, though, second Exodus, when it first started, there was no temple, right? The temple was never mandated. That was man's thing. There'll be a day, and it talks about it, where everybody's gathered together again. Wherever that Shekinah is, the sacrifices can begin again. Mm-hmm. And so when you're in the wilderness, all these laws will apply. So in Deuteronomy 13, it says you should not love your family. We talked about family earlier too. Mother, brother, father, sister, whatever. If they come to you and they said, look at this miracle or whatever, or your wife of your bosom comes to you and says, let's follow this other Elohim, and it could be they're saying Yahweh, but they're telling you to do something else. It's your duty to actually take them for the ruling class and kill them. Your hand's supposed to be the first hand to toss a stone. So there was that about that, and then we were talking about the Septuagint. It's calling him Lord, right? You say Yeshua is my Lord, right? Well, that word curios was also used to cover up the name Yahweh. So the interpretation there could also be he who doesn't say that Yeshua is Yahweh. Shall not be saying, right? So that same because they had started that whole Adonai thing. Adonai just translates into curios. Curios is just master, right?
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate that. Miss Sandra, it's been a while.
Okay, with the story of the Good Samaritan, when the priest walked by there, the guy was not dead. He was not dead. He was probably groaning. He was beaten. He was violated. He was beaten, and then you have this priest walking by going, oh, whatever, and walking on. And then the Levite comes along, checks it out, looks at him, and then passes by on the other side of the road also. The guy wasn't dead. And then you have the Samaritan, who was an abomination to anybody that, to the Jews, came by and cared for this man. So, do you think that this man that was laying there would be saying, "Oh my gosh, don't touch me! You're a Samaritan. You're unclean. You're unholy." Well, the religious people are the ones that declared them unclean in the first place. Yahweh never declared them unclean.
They weren't Israel.
They weren't Israel, but it was the religious groups that said you cannot associate with Gentiles. So this was not Yahweh's part saying that you're walking by and if you see somebody like this, because it would not have defiled them for them to go and get somebody else to help them, get the man, even if he was dead, you know. And it's like, wow, how many times do we do that? Oh, we'll let somebody else take care of this. You know, yeah, you know, whatever. If he's not dead, he'll be okay. Or somebody else will be coming by and just let somebody else take care of that.
Morgan touched on it with Peter's vision, you know, and then when he interpreted that vision, that it wasn't from the Torah that it was unclean. It was the man-made doctrines, those boundaries that made Peter think that it was unclean. But it took Yahweh to give him that vision, and he had to do it 3 times. And no, Father, absolutely not. I will not eat anything unclean. We know this is years after Yeshua's death, burial, and resurrection. And so for him to go to the Gentile, to go to Cornelius, and Cornelius was a fear of Yahweh, him and all of his family. So on that revelation, we're seeing that Ichad. We talk about Yeshua and Yahweh being Ichad. The tribes of Israel, they're Ichad. There's 12 tribes, but they're all one. So.
And that was a big deal. I mean, that is a big deal. You know, just that whole vision with Peter and the clean, unclean, and people, you know, and all the religious stuff. And then Sister Terry said that if it was an ox in a ditch, they probably would have went over there to take him out. Get him out of the ditch.
Brother Stan.
That's a good point. Yeah, you know, that Samaritan that helped this Jew on the way that he was hurt. If you go back to the book of Kings, the Samaritans actually were Israelites. Since they were not Jews, but there, you know, remember that the house of Israel was taken captive by this Assyrian king. So the scripture says that those Samaritans actually were the very poor people that were left there of the tribes of Israel. And then this king, this pagan king, you know, brought his people from the land to Samaria, and they mixed up the blood. So they were hybrid, we say, Israelites, you know, half-breed, mixed up.
They were half-breed.
So that's why the Jews didn't accepted them as part of their, you know, people. You know?
I never read that they were actually from Israel. It said that they brought from like Sepharvaim and all these cities, and they brought their deities with them. They didn't know Yahweh, and then they needed a priest who did know Yahweh to teach them. But they kept their pagan deities along with Yahweh.
But those were the people that the king brought into that land. Yeah. So there were actually Israelites that were left there that were not taken captive. But only the very low class people that was left there in Samaria. We call it Shomron.
Let me ask you this. The Samaritan woman did tell Yeshua that her forefather Yaakov, right? So they know that well. Yeah. So she's relating Yaakov as her forefather,
right? Yes.
Then either she was grafted in, or there was some.
Yes, and that's what we're saying today, and that's what I keep saying to everybody today. When it says that when you are of Mashiach, you're of Abraham's seed, you heirs to the promise, right? So, and then it says we just read in the prophet today that when you they will turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the children to the fathers. Some people think it's, well, that's my literal children, right? We start loving my kids, but other people have interpreted that as it'll turn the hearts of the people back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So for her to declare, our father Jacob done this well, she's proclaiming, even though she may not literally be the blood of Jacob, she may be actually declaring, I am Israel through Jacob, because my father Jacob bought this land, and who else am I, right?
does not necessarily mean that she's a bloodline descendant of it. Just like today, we may not be a bloodline descendant, but I'll still call Jacob my father. Jacob's my father. And I don't know if he's literally my father or if he's not, but according to this book and according to my king, my Messiah, he's my father. So I'm gonna trust in those words, and then, the day he sees me, he might not recognize me. But I'm your child, I'm your kid,
I got a good parallel for this.
Adoption is legal.
I've got a good parallel for that, because I was speaking to some brothers this morning. I have a son. He is not of my bloodline, but I adopted him, and he carries my name.
Yeah.
So he is my son. I love him like he was my very own. So that's how the Father looks at us. If we love him, he doesn't look at us as stepchildren. He looks at us as his children. So when
you care for him, then he is your own.
Yeah.
That life is your own. He is your own.
Right.
He's not your blood, but he is your own.
Yeah.
Stan. We'll get to you, Josiah. You're down.
It wasn't on the teaching, but just to let everybody know, we are in the last of the last days. Okay? There's a biblical plague of locusts that is wiping out all the Muslim, Hindu, and communist nations of Africa, the Mideast, Southeast Asia right now. Okay? Devouring all of their food. These people only have locusts to eat. That's it. Okay? This whole COVID-19 is not just a pestilence, it's a bioweapon. Okay? It was made in the laboratory. You can't have AIDS proteins in it and SARS also. They did this, and we can thank our illustrious Dr. Fauci for supplying them with $3.7 million and his research into it.
And transferring the lab to China.
Yeah. The end game is forced vaccination.
Yeah. That and 5G, because under the cover of the lockdown, they're rolling out 5G, and 5G has the very same symptoms of COVID-19, with the added bonus of burning and tingling in your skin. You better be saving up food, because they're dumping millions of gallons of milk. They're slaughtering pigs, cows, and cattle because they closed down most of the meat packing plants.
Thank you. Miss Lana. There goes Lana, Brian, Josiah, Cameron. Okay, sorry. Brian.
Mick was sharing some shadow pictures of Yeshua in the Tanakh today. It was really cool. But he was talking about Joshua or Yehoshua with Moshe. He was with him on the mountain. And when he moved the tent outside the camp, when Moshe would leave, Yehoshua would stay in the tent. Yehoshua was of the tribe of Ephraim. I think that's a shadow picture. I want to say this humbly, because I mean it humbly. But we may not just be studying this today to apply it in our lives. We may be studying this today to help others. Because Yehoshua led the nation of Israel over the Jordan into the promised land in the first Exodus. And I don't know exactly what Yahweh's going to use in the second one, but those who have an ear to hear and eyes to see and apply it in your lives, we can be better servants to Yah to help others.
Amen. Josiah.
So in Nehemiah, he rebukes these people who are from the northern kingdom, who are married in with the Gentiles, and now they're wanting to come and worship at the temple. But then turn back a few thousand years, and you've got Ruth, who is not physically Israelite, but she's adopted into the family, and that's okay. So, what is Scripture saying then about Nehemiah? What was the situation different, or was Nehemiah wrong giving what he did?
No, they're not. So okay, these guys said, we have worshipped your Elohim since the days of Esarhaddon, right? Esarhaddon was an Edomite king. So if these guys are the same guys who they got mixed worship, if they have mixed worship, they're not like Ruth. Ruth did not say, oh, I'm going to worship, your people are going to be my people, and your God's going to be one of my gods.
Yeah, exactly.
She said, your God's going to be my God.
Yes.
That's the only Elohim, right? Whereas these people are like, oh yeah, we got a little spot. See this little statue here? That's Yahweh. And then this one's this one. You know what I mean? We got one for Molech. We got one for this guy over here. So there's a difference between these people and a difference between Ruth. Ruth was fully submitted.
So if these people had married the other families, if those families had cut out all their other gods and worshiped Yahweh exclusively, then that wouldn't have been a problem for them to come and worship at the temple.
They would have been the crossed over ones. You know, they would have been totally allowed to, because it says within 10 generations. They're basically Israelites.
Or tens were Midianites, but yeah.
Yeah, these were. Yeah, these people had an agenda. And once the Jewish people who came back would not compromise, they completely started a smear campaign to the king and whatnot, try to stop the temple from being built.
Thank you for clarifying.
There's another view on Ruth. I just want to share this other view. The promised land was considered the land of Canaan, and the Israelites lived in the land of Canaan. Okay, but on their way to cross the Jordan, 2.5 tribes liked the land on the other side of it, and they asked, "Can we have this land?" And in that land was the mountains of Moab. Yep. So 2.5 of the tribes lived in the mountains of Moab. Israelites lived in the mountains of Moab. But they had to build their pens for the livestock, and they had to join the men and defeat the warriors before they could come back and live there. So there's a point of view that Ruth was an Israelite living in the mountains of Moab with the 2.5 tribes that were living outside. That was not originally part of the promised land. It was outside the promised land. Right. But it was part of the 12 tribes. So consider when she says, Elohim can be mighty ones and judges. And there was the priests were living down there, the Levite priests were down there, and they have rulers down there. So do a search on it, because Yah made a decree that no Moabite, not even for 10 generations, could come into the assembly of Yah. And how many generations is Jesse, the father of David, from Moab? Like 6? So the thought that she's not an Israelite does not sync with the policy that a Moabite could not even after 10 generations, could not mix in the assembly of God. It's something to study.
Yeah.
Cameron.
Hold
on. We'll get Cameron, and then we'll go to you, brother. Sorry.
So it's my understanding that, we're back to the stranger in the midst. I don't know. I think it's relevant. It was relevant to some comment, but I think it's even relevant to this discussion. But those Jews who follow Torah, they follow the teaching to love the stranger in the midst. But those who follow the Babylonian Talmud, that Talmud says that Jews are the only humans, that all other ethnicities are subhuman dogs, and they were born to be their slaves or beheaded.
Yes, true.
So we have to make a distinction between the synagogue of Satan and the true, Israel, the true Judah. And
the way.
The true is those who follow Torah. But even those who follow the Babylonian Talmud call that Torah. So there's a lot of deception. And it's my understanding that when Yahweh emptied himself into the body of a human being, Yahshua HaMashiach, and came on this earth in the fullness of the Godhead, as in Colossians 2:9, he got in the face of the Pharisees, not for keeping Torah, but for their oral traditions. And the way they got around that, they didn't stop after he was crucified, risen, and ascended. They got around that by writing down the oral traditions and calling it the Talmud, but boy, I'd say anything with the name Babylonian in it, run.
Well, they got
There's two Talmuds.
got a Jerusalem one too, but.
Oh, okay,
And
okay, thank you.
And we've spoken before about the Holocaust, the Torah, and the oral traditions, and then the new writings. So there's 3 different sections that they elevate different things to. They try to put the oral traditions equal with the Torah, and that's
Yeah.
improper. So
Yeah,
the
that's-
Holocaust from the Talmud.
That's a great distinction though, because I was not aware there was a Jerusalem Talmud.
So the thing I'd like you to keep in mind too, though, please, you know, it said, because we don't want to start firing machine gun at Jewish people.
Right.
Okay,
Right,
so
anybody who says I'm the only human being.
No, I understand that.
You gotta die.
I do understand that, I understand
That's all.
that. There's other groups that say the same thing, and they call themselves Hebrews, like Hebrew Israelites,
Black
that
Hebrew
everybody
Israelites.
who's white is an Edomite.
Like a black.
Okay, so there's that going on, and so it comes out of pain, out of bitterness from, you know, the church is actually turning around and going, hey, all these Jews, their houses need to be burnt down, and the women raped, and all this stuff like that. So that and they held that bitterness, which is not right according to Torah, but they held it, and it's same thing with people of color who are sitting there going, well, all you white people, you oppressed us, and you did this to us, and you're.
So you can see where the trauma and the
You see where it's going, and you flip around. You're on the other side of the bench. You see people who, well, you know, I'm a white person, but another rich white person treated me like garbage. So all the rich people, all this, you know, so you get this bitterness that builds up, but the mandate in the Torah is to have mercy and forgiveness.
Yes.
Now.
And that ends it.
Yeah, and so like for instance, when I sit around the whole time all bitter and angry about the church. I was super upset about being lied to. And, you know, and I heard him say that you show off like that. It took me a long time. I was like, I know, but I'm still, you know, still messed up about it, right? It doesn't help to be bitter against people, and the thing is that everybody's got something. Everybody's been hurt by somebody. There's been a bad teacher, a bad rabbi, a bad dude next door. You had a bad husband. This guy used to rape me, beat me, and then, you know what I mean? But does that mean every man is a bad man? Does that mean every teacher's a bad teacher? Does that mean, okay, there's Jewish people in the world, or just Jewish people?
Okay, still true. But there's an agenda to export the Noahide laws and lob our heads off. Because we are not real human beings. That we don't accept their Noahide laws, which are manufactured.
Do you believe that every Jewish person on the planet believes that?
Absolutely not. That's not what I'm talking. That's why I said there are some that keep Torah and some that hold to the oral traditions of the Pharisees.
We also have Islam in this country that states that they have the right to take any Christian person's property at any given time and kill them. You know, these are the people that we're coming up against, and you know, this is why we say, what's in the Torah? If it's in the Torah, then we can apply it, we can live by it, and we know that it's true. If we have any additions to the Talmud, the Quran, any other extra biblical writings, you got to give credence. Can't give that much credence to those sources.
These laws are on the books, and they're exporting them now. That's all I'm saying.
They were voted in this country, I think, in 94, 96, by the first Bush.
I know.
They instituted the Noahide laws in this country in the law.
But they're about to become manifest. So I'm just saying, beware.
Something to be concerned about.
Yeah.
You got your brother, and then we'll end with Mike and Jude.
Yeah, about Ruth. Actually, you know, there is a curse against the Moabites, because when the people of Israel, when they got out of Egypt, they wanted to cross to that land, and because the king didn't allow it, then all the men were cursed. So he said all the men are cursed because they didn't allow Israel to cross throughout that land. But Ruth was a woman, so women, I was told that women were exempt from that curse. So that's why Ruth came into the congregation. was allowed into the congregation.
They were allowed to marry, like when they had a war, and there was a woman who was foreign, and as long as she had known man by lying with him,
And yeah, exactly.
she could marry her, right?
Yeah. And what you're saying about the no-high laws is beware of the Jews that because there is a lot, they're trying to bring a lot of Gentiles to this teaching. It's actually the Chabad movement. Just in case, Chabad movement. Just keep that in mind. So that's what the Chabad.
The Jews who are not Jews.
This teaching was brought up by a rabbi that already died. That they declared the Messiah.
Oh yeah.
He died. He was. His last name is Nielsen.
Nielsen, yeah.
Yeah, that's the one who brought these Chabad. These no high laws.
Yeah, it's a cult.
Touching on the synagogue of Satan. Okay, I just want to understand is that the synagogue in the scriptures, most of the time, unless it's something negative, they translate it over to church. Unless they wanted to say something negative and kind of point the bad light on Jewish people. So the synagogue of Satan, the synagogue is exactly what church was back in the day.
And see a separation. I think it's all the same spirit.
Yeah, so for instance, it was just supposed to be a gathering place. And then later on it became, we're going to church, right? But so technically, if you go into an assembly and they're teaching something other than the Torah and what Yahweh and Yahshua or whatever it said, you're in a synagogue of Satan.
It's all synagogue.
You're in a synagogue of Satan. So
I agree.
Mike, and then June, and we'll end it in prayer.
It's clear that there's people who are with evil intent in every nation, people group. I mean, it's easy to see, like you pointed out with Islam, it's clear, but I mean, Islam's killed lots of people.
Yes.
Lots of innocent people, yeah. They've killed mostly their own people just because they take offense at something. And the Jews, we know that it's clear among I believe it was particularly the Sadducees who were into the higher points of government of Israel at the time and wanted to maintain their place, and they were the ones who kind of instigated the death of Yahshua. The Sanhedrin, which was mainly comprised of Sadducees. But however, were the Pharisees there? Yes.
Pharisees was a Sadducee.
Yes, he was. Because the Sadducees had no problem paying money to the Romans and saying, well, I'll work with you easily. The Pharisees were a lot more zealot oriented, or not zealous, but basically less favorable to the Romans. So anyway, Yahshua said, but both of them, he said to the Pharisees, hey, you guys are hypocrites 7 times. Hypocrites. You say you do the law, but then you don't do the law. Hypocrites. And he lambasted them 7 times in a row. So he had some evil things. The Sadducees, I believe whom he was speaking to, he said, you're of your father, the devil, because he was a murderer and a liar from the beginning, right? So you know them by their works. Today you have Muslims. Today, actually the biggest killer of people in the world today is secular humanism. They've killed hundreds of millions of people. Hundreds of millions of people. So that's clear. They're all over the place. So yeah, Yeshua's answer to this doesn't make a lot of sense to me in one sense, because I have people who've done me wrong, and I really tend to have bad feelings toward them. But he says, love your enemies. Do good to them who despitefully use you. Right? They slander your reputation. They do all these things. He says, love them. Okay, I will do my best. So, well, I don't know about that. I mean, there's different things what the government can do and what individual citizens can do. Those are 2 separate things. So, anyway, what I was going to say is, if I'm to love my enemy, what I can do is I can love my Muslim friend who wants to chop my head off, but I can hate his religion and his doctrine. It says, hate what is evil, or abhor is the word. Abhor what is evil and cling to what is good. So basically I can say, well, I'm going to not do my enemy harm, but I still will hate his doctrine, and I'll hate his teaching that says he can kill me and kill my family. I'm gonna tell him so, because that's what
allowed to rebuke them.
Yes, it's fine. Hey, yeah, that's Yeshua's the example. What did he say to them? You're of your father the devil. He just was telling them to the truth. John the Baptist, you're a bunch of snakes. But that was the most loving thing to do at the time, because sometimes a person doesn't need that gentle hand, like maybe Mary Magdalene did, need a gentle hand, or the woman at the well, perhaps a little bit more gentle, a little more caught in adultery. He treated her very gently. But to the other people, it was kind of a slap in the face. Hey, you're a bunch of snakes. Hey, you're of your father the devil. What? I'm of the Sanhedrin. What are you talking about? So in other words, we can hate their teaching and teach against it and speak against it and tell them the truth and still love the person. That's my other point.
But my point was just, let's be aware.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay. Yes, sir.
This is good. So after we kill akeremot, after we kill ourselves from the passions of this world, from the doctrines that's not written here, it says here, after I killed Nadab and Abihu, after the death, then we have to be holy. Get the sheep set apart. Let us stand.
Yeah, and
Let's pray. I thank you, Father, for this day that you have given us awesome, and to study your word, that we should be closer to you as we dig deeper and know you more, that you will show your mercy to us, show your face, and that you will show us your love, as we also will show our love to our fellow men. We ask you, Father, that you will bless us as we go back to our places. For those people traveling back to a far place like Phoenix, may you bless them, Father, and may you protect them. And for this afternoon, we will say our blessing. Yevareketa Yahweh, B'yishmareka, Yair Yahweh Panavelecha, B'yikuneka, Yisai Yahweh Panavelecha, B'yasimlecha, Shalom. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh shine His face upon you and be gracious to you. May Yahweh lift up His countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, everybody. You guys are more than welcome to hang out. Thank you guys so much for coming today. It's a blessing. Love seeing everybody today.
Good. Seeing you guys. And for those who wants to help with